Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your daily source for Black news, views, and Black opinions. Today is Wednesday, June 1st already, and I'm Mimi Brown.
I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo, and on today's report, the police chief in charge of the Uvalde, Texas school district is no longer cooperating with authorities. This after the focus has shifted to why the chief of police waited over an hour before confronting the gunman. Meanwhile, the WNBPA Players Association is raising its voice, calling for more action to get Brittney Griner released, as the Players Association is asking athletes to go public, demanding her return home. Then, the leader of an armed black militia group could face as much as 7 years in prison for pointing a weapon at a federal officer. And we have that story.
Plus, Anita Baker thanks a Chicago rapper for helping her retain the masters to her music. And Nicki Minaj locks in a new global multi-year gig, and we'll let you know what that is right here, man. We have all that and so much more. It's our voice and our truth. So let's get it.
The police in charge of the Uvalde, Texas school district, he's no longer cooperating with authorities. Texas Department of Public Safety officials say he has not responded to a request for follow-up interviews in 2 days. The investigation now focusing on why Pete Arredondo, the chief of police for the school district, decided to wait over an hour before confronting the gunman as students and one teacher called 911 begging for help. There's also new information about the back door that was propped open by a teacher. State police now say additional video footage shows the teacher slamming the door shut after seeing the gunman crash his truck. However, the door did not lock and the shooter was able to enter the school, killing 19 children and 2 teachers. Meanwhile, it will be a familiar scene over the next 2.5 weeks. Uvalde's 2 funeral homes working overtime to honor the victims. Yesterday, 10-year-old Amari Joe Garza and Maitai Rodriguez were laid to rest. Amari's family says she was one of several students who tried calling 911 during the attack. And today, the funerals of students Jose Flores and his teacher, Irma Garcia, will take place. The chief of police that isn't responding, well, he's pushing back and he's saying that's not true. But as of about 10 minutes ago, I just checked and he hasn't made himself available. So for me, I kind of feel like it's a good thing that he hasn't made himself available, just because I would like for them to gather all the information and come back to us when they know everything, because we continue to get conflicting reports. So now we're hearing that locked door that was propped open, that the teacher, because, you know, when they first came out, they said that the teacher left the door open and they were blaming it on the teacher. Now they're saying a video, there's proof that teacher actually tried to close the door and it would not lock. And so that's not the only thing that they came out and said that they're walking back. There's additional comments. They said that someone tried to engage the shooter. They also said that officers immediately entered the school and tried to engage the shooter. They said that they had the shooter pinned down to one location and it was a barricade situation. So there's so many things that are coming out that have turned out not to be true. And so what I need from them is for them to gather their thoughts and then come do a press conference, inform the public truthfully. And so that way we all get the correct information, because what it looks like right now is that they don't know what they're talking about. And that's making everyone anxious and nervous that the information that's coming out isn't true. So the fact that he's not talking doesn't worry me yet. I hopefully he's using this time to gather his thoughts, talk to his other officers, and come back and give us the real.
I honestly, I don't think that it makes them look as if they don't know what they're talking about. I think that it more so makes them look like they're trying to cover something up, because when there are so many conflicting reports, it's like, well, what is the truth? What is not the truth? Remember, you broke it down perfectly, all of the different, and I don't want to call them lies, but retracting of statements, because we've heard so many different conflicting reports, as you've said here. And so I personally feel like there's something that someone is hiding here, because I don't feel like, why would there be so many different stories? What what happened. Was the door propped open? Did a person prop the door open? How did he get inside? If you did all these extra security protocols, how was he still able to get inside?
Right.
But the main question that everybody is wondering right now is what took so long. That's really all I want to know, is why did it take so long? Even if the door was propped open, even if a teacher propped the door open, it doesn't matter. That does matter. But what I really want to know is how and why did they wait so long to enter the school?
Yeah, you think about 19 officers were in that building at some point, yet they did not intervene. They did not try and stop the shooter. The teacher who was accused or allegedly accused of leaving the door propped open, she had got a lawyer at some point. So now here's what you have. You're saying the way this was handled was not correct. So we're going to go ahead and look at everything possible. We know this was not done right. Let us take a few days and look at it. Instead, they're leaking information like you said, Mimi. So now we're getting this, we're getting that. There's some confusion. I understand why this officer is not speaking right now. It's a smart move on his part, because let all the questions come out. Did he fail us? It sounds like he did. But let's get all the other evidence to make sure everything adds up properly, because, look, we have to have answers moving forward, because unfortunately, this may not be the last time this happens again. There continue to be death threats for schools right now across our country, so we have to see what we did wrong and what we can do to make it right.
And to your point, Demi, I definitely think they're covering something up, but with all the information that's leaking out, we already know they failed in their response time. They failed to correlate those 911 calls to the officer standing in that hallway. So at this point, I feel like we already know they're covering something up. What they need to be doing now is just figuring out how to learn from here and give us all the information. Hey, some mistakes were made.
Yeah.
This is what we're trying to figure out now, and so maybe this is a case study for next time. I hate to say that, but for next time, don't do this and don't do that.
I just don't want the teacher to take the fall here when the police department, they need to also acknowledge where they were wrong also. I don't want it to move forward to, a teacher left the door open, we're going to blame her for night.
Well, that video shows you she's pretty clear at this point.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
I just don't want her to be the sole person, because there are other people that are also responsible for these deaths as well.
Absolutely.
The recent mass shootings have once again sparked a debate on the Second Amendment. President Biden is weighing in, and he says the Second Amendment was never absolute. Biden's comments come a day after he traveled to Uvalde to visit families and friends of students and teachers slain in the school shooting. Biden says he thinks things have gotten way too worse and very bad in America with gun violence, and that everyone is becoming more rational about restrictions on gun ownership.
A majority of Republicans believe discrimination against white people is as big of a problem as hate crimes against black people. A Yahoo News YouGov survey says 64% of Republicans surveyed say white people experience a fair amount of hate or discrimination in America. The poll also says 53% of Fox News viewers agree with the core tenet of the white supremacist Great Replacement conspiracy theory. That theory says a Jewish cabal is trying to replace native-born whites with immigrants and people of color. It's also the theory the gunman in the Buffalo grocery store massacre wrote about in his manifesto. Sometimes when I hear stories, I think it's ludicrous when I think about this. I would say this. Yes, people do feel like that they're losing grip of a country that's not theirs from the beginning, if we want to really do our history on this, right? We know the percentage is changing. It's making a major change. 10 years from now, it could be where white people are not the majority. They could be a minority because of people of color. And look, this is life. This is what's going on. But you can't sit back and say you feel the same fear. You get the same backlash or racism that people of color do, because it's obvious that that is not the case.
It's obvious that that's not the case. And yesterday we did the story of the pregnant, unarmed black woman who was shot 5 times. If she had been white, this story would be everywhere. It would be in national news. They would be calling for the head of that entire police department. The officer would be in jail. I mean, just think about the injustices that are done to black people and the response that we get. We always have to fight for justice. When it happens to a white person, they never really have to, the laws work in their favor. They don't have to hold marches and rallies to get people arrested. So this study and how white people feel, or some white people feel, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
There's a term for this called white victimhood, and so I've been reading up a lot on it. And so a quote in an article that I was reading says that Trump was successful in finding a predominantly white audience who lapped up to his overt racism towards people of color and were eager to embrace a rising sense of white victimhood. And so it's plain as day. Racism has been a while for a very long time, but white victimhood is a new new term. It's kind of like how allyship, a couple of terms that kind of just started coming up in the last couple of years. And so it's called white victimhood. And, we're not going to stand for it because you guys are absolutely right. It's not the same thing and nowhere near.
No, and I'll say this in closing. The fact that we want to talk about things that happened in the past to people of color, we want that to come to in schools, and we want to teach that. It's not so much they should feel like they should be offended by it. This is something their ancestors did. We want you to learn from it so we can be better as a country moving forward. Instead of sitting back saying, why are y'all picking on me? It's not the case. You're missing the point when you look at it.
And that's the whole reason why we have a Fox Soul's Black Report, because we're telling these stories. If it was equal, we wouldn't even be here. We wouldn't need to be here because our stories would be shared everywhere.
Yeah, we would need to be fighting for reparations as well because we would feel like we have the same piece of the pie as white Americans do.
Absolutely. All right. Well, the White House may be having problems keeping some of its black staffers. A Political article says 21 African American staffers have left the Biden administration. The story says more may leave soon. Political says the staffers describe a work environment with little support and fewer chances of advancement. Some aides are calling it Blaxit, a play on the Brexit term used by British politicians who wanted out of the European Union. The departures include Congressman Cedric Richmond, who was an aide to President Biden and now working for the Democratic National Committee, and Simone Sanders, who was a former press aide to VP Harris. She left and is now a host for MSNBC. The exodus is raising concerns among outside observers who are pushing for diversification in government. But the Biden administration says there is no problem, and they are proud to have the most diverse White House history in history.
The WNBPA Players Association is raising its voice, calling for more action to get Brittney Griner released. Griner has been in a Russian jail for 105 days. The Players Association wants more athletes to go public with their calls for Griner to be released. The Players Association also wants players from pro sports teams to hold media blackouts in an effort to bring attention to the issue. The league is urging President Biden to meet with Sherelle Griner, the ball player's wife. The WNBPA is also asking for signatures on a change.org petition demanding the United States government to do whatever is necessary to bring Griner home. And so this is a shocking turn of events where we started. We're like, hey, let's be quiet. Let's let the Russian government do what needs to be done. Now it's like, it seems like it's make or break at this moment. And it seems like there's a certain sense of fear that's going on. And so I'm actually literally more nervous now because the WNBPA, they're nervous. You would think that they would be kind of in tune with what's going on. But if they're asking for, begging and pleading for athletes to stand out and fans and blackouts and petitions, there might be something going on that we don't know about.
I'm just happy that they are doing this now. I feel like this is what we should have done in the beginning, but, I don't know what was going on behind closed doors. Obviously, better late than never. So sign the petition. It's on your screen in the lower third. Maybe go there, put your name on that change.org petition to bring Griner home. Yeah. And hopefully, more comes of this and more players will speak out. And I know her wife is doing lots of interviews, and I just think that that's what it's going to take.
Yeah, it's definitely going to take that. And I'll say this real quick. We don't know when this war is going to end, and we don't want Russia to use that as a leverage not to get her home. So we have to do what it takes to get her home ASAP. All right, Democrats are facing headwinds in the midterm elections, can't afford any more bad news. Now, recent polls show President Biden supporting among African Americans is down 24% from 2020. His approval rating among black voters is down from 87 to 63%. While Biden still remains popular with black voters, Democrats are worried low turnout in November will hurt their chances of keeping control of the Senate.
And the leader of an armed black militia group could face as much as 7 years in prison for pointing a weapon at a federal officer. John F. Johnson, also known as Grandmaster J, was convicted of assaulting a federal task force cop. The incident happened during a protest at the Kentucky Derby in September of 2020. The demonstrators were bringing attention to the death of Breonna Taylor at the hands of the police. Johnson's group, the Not Effing Around Coalition, is a black separatist group that believes in using arms to protect black people. Sentencing for Johnson is in August. I remember when I first saw him out there when this happened and his armed militia, and I was just thinking to myself, great, a black man arming himself, letting the Second Amendment rights work for him and his group of people. But with that being said, I knew that they were going to find some sort of way to get him, for lack of a better word. I mean,
We talked yesterday about the NRA. The NRA was not necessarily set up for black people. It's set up for the white Americans that want to be gun holders, and we don't have to go into the whole NRA speech right now, but it was not set up. The system was not set up for us. Yes, Mimi, like you said, originally it was kind of cool to see a black man like, hey, you know, gun ownership it increased a lot over the pandemic. A lot of more black people wanted to protect themselves with guns. And so this was like, yes, we feel proud, but also because the system was not set up for us, they weren't, like you said, they were never going to let him just walk around and tote a gun and be all outwardly with it.
And you think about some of the charges I was reading, I'm like, this is like a whole paragraph. Evidence presented at the trial was Johnson forcibly assaulted, resisted, opposed, intimidated, and interfered with a federal deputized task force. Like, that's a lot. Let's just put things on top of it, right?
Yeah.
But that word intimidated that you just said, I think that's the big thing. That's the key right there. They felt intimidated because they were not used to seeing a black man with all those black people having guns.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, we're intimidated as black people when we wake up. So, you know, there we have that. All right, support for the Black Lives Matter organization among African Americans is surprisingly dropping. A YouGov poll, it says that support of BLM by black people dropped from 67% in April of 2021 to 56% just this year. Now, black support for the strategies and tactics of the group have also fallen from 65% down to 49%. The news comes 2 years after the death of George Floyd. They also come after revelations of how the group has used millions of dollars of donations. Overall, support of BLM by any Americans has fallen in 2 years from 48 to 31%.
2 officers facing a state trial in the death of George Floyd are asking for the trial to be moved. Attorneys for Total and J. Alexander Kung are asking the trial to be delayed and relocated. They say their clients cannot get a fair trial in Minneapolis. They say the court cannot select a fair and impartial jury. After the Derek Chauvin conviction, the former cops are charged with depriving Floyd of his right to medical care when Officer Derek Chauvin pressed his knee into his neck, killing him.
And Supreme Court officials are intensifying their search for the person who leaked the draft opinion that would overturn Roe v. Wade. CNN says high court officials are taking steps to require law clerks to provide cell phone records and sign affidavits. The report comes after clerks are upset over the moves. They are concerned about handing over their private phone data. Some are even thinking about hiring lawyers. The report says Chief Justice John Roberts met with a group of law clerks after the breach.
Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards is expected to sign a bill into law that will parole some inmates who were given life sentences. At the time they were sentenced, some of those inmates had been told that they would be released after 10 years and 6 months of good behavior. Louisiana state lawmakers, they passed the bill last week, and the bill, it will provide parole eligibility to about 20 people, the majority who are African American. Now, the men known as the 10-6 lifers have been in the Pelican State Prison for at least 50 years.
In international news, at least 31 people are dead after a stampede at a church charity event in southern Nigeria. Hundreds of people gathered to receive free food at the event over the weekend. Police say some people who were impatient broke through a gate, causing the stampede. Witnesses say the death toll may be higher than what police are reporting. A similar incident happened at a charity event in the region in 2020.
And police in Springfield, Missouri are trying to find out who spray painted a swastika on the side of a historic African American church. The pastor of the Pitts Chapel United Methodist Church says that someone sprayed the swastika on the church on May 18th. Police say they are investigating the incident as a hate crime. Church members cleaned the swastika off of the building shortly after it was discovered. Now, Pitts Chapel was established in 1847 by enslaved Africans, making it the oldest church in the state. And as of right now, police say they have no suspects and are asking witnesses for anyone who has any information to contact the police immediately. In the meantime, the church plans to beef up security.
And the mother of a Tennessee middle schooler is suing the local school district, accusing them of doing nothing to protect her child from racist attacks from white students. Erica Quall says she repeatedly told administrators at Church Hill Middle School and the Hawkins County School Board that her child was being tormented by other students. Quall's lawsuit says school officials either ignored or downplayed her complaints. The mother says her son was subjected to being called the N-word, called monkey, and shown pictures of Klansmen holding a torch and noose. A spokesperson for the Hawkins County Board of Education denies the school tolerated racism of any kind.
A complaint has been filed against the Kentucky apartment complex alleging it discriminates against black renters. The terrorists at the Forest Springs are accused of discouraging black people with federal housing vouchers from applying to live there, but the complaint filed by the Louisville Metro Human Relations Commission says the complex welcomes white people with Section 8 vouchers. The Mickelson Realty Group denies the charges. A hearing has been scheduled for the Mickelson's officials and Kentucky's Office of the Attorney General to discuss the issue.